Hello and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be showing you my single eyeshadow collection. It is pretty much mostly multi-chrome eyeshadows, some duochrome eyeshadows, and a very little amount of mattes. So I thought I would make it into a multi-chrome Monday video. I have dedicated videos on 99% of these eyeshadows by collection and as they came out. I also have lots of swatch comparisons which are either in those dedicated videos or they are general comparison videos like all the black based multi-chromes, all the iridescent multi-chromes, etc. I have a whole playlist for multi-chrome Monday as well as multi-chrome eyeshadows, so you can check those out. So let's get right into it because there's quite a few eyeshadows. Well, few is really truly an understatement, obviously. Some of these shadows were gifted to me and some of these were purchased by me. I also did recently do a empty eyeshadow palette dedicated video where I talked about my storage for single eyeshadows. So if you're interested in any of these palettes, check out that video. There are a couple that I actually forgot to mention that I will point out in this video, but otherwise if you want recommendations, check out that video. Definitely will leave it down in the description box. So starting out in no particular order, these are all my Terra eyeshadows. Well, almost all of them. There's the iridescent ones are with the other iridescent shadows from other brands. So first up is the new collection, the newest collection rather, as well as 3 single shadows that are from their like Amazon set. I believe it was 3 eyeshadows that were available on Amazon. I'm not sure if they're still up there. And I believe those are actually these 3 shadows. So Magnetosphere, Radial Velocity, and Alphion or something like that. So I'm just going to swatch them just for funsies. So shiny. Oh, that one is super sparkly. This one actually kind of reminds me a little bit of this one. But actually, let me just see. Oh, that's interesting. This one is definitely darker. This is Hallie's Comet. I love that shadow. And then this one is so beautiful. I love how green it is, but it has the flecks of blue. It is very interesting for sure. I do have a dedicated video on this entire most recent collection with the exception of the 3 Amazon shadows if you are interested in that one. Terra is really good with having lots of more unique multi-chrome eyeshadows as well as varying textures. They have a very, very smooth texture. They have a more sparkly texture. They have a flaky texture and then like an extra flaky texture. So there's a lot to choose from really depending on what you're looking for and what you prefer to use on your lids. So I recently organized my Terra Moons in their Terra Moons palettes. So these are the 2 largest ones and then the smaller ones. This one in particular is not actually finished up and these are non-multi-chrome shadows. So these are really beautiful, shiny, metallic, smooth neutrals. I'll just swatch a couple here for you because honestly they are just liquid metal basically. They're so beautiful. This one's a little bit on the flaky side, but look at that. They're so beautiful. It's just good to have some really nice and shiny neutrals. Except I believe these are the oranges and the yellows, even though this shadow actually from an angle looks blue to me right now and this one looks pink. But in the frame they look orangey yellow. And this is a mixture of collections, of course. These are really mainly just to be organized by color so I know where to reach for, especially for comparison. Makes it really handy. Let me swatch Solar Delirium because it is so sparkly and just so shiny. Look at that. Onto the larger palettes. This one is the greens and the blues predominantly. And I kind of try to order them as much as I could by color. So going from green to blue, however, it's a little difficult because, you know, they are multi-chrome, so they shift. So let's see, what should I swatch? Really standout shades. Ganymede, I love Ganymede. This one is actually looking a little bit more, it's like a goldish green, super shiny. You can see it again reflecting super easily. So that one's like a chunkier texture. And then, for example, some smoother texture would be this shadow, which is called Callisto. And this is a duochrome, I believe. And this one is just totally different from this one as well, which I forget the name of this one, Perihelion. But you could see the difference in the texture here. And then the last palette is pinks and purples and some more neutral leaning shades on the bottom row. Again, we have lots of textures going on here. Some chunkier, more sparkly textures up here. I feel like when I lift the palette up, you can see a little bit better. And then we've got some smoother textures. I turned it down just a little bit so you can see them better. I feel like it was getting a little blown out. There are 2 shadows that I don't even think that they've restocked actually. These were really strange kind of multi-chrome shifting shades. They have like a grayish base. They're actually pretty dull. They look pretty interesting swatched out, but they were really underwhelming because they are so satin-like. It is Made on Mars and Falling Star. They became even more dull on the eyes. To this day, one of my most favorite shades is Helix Nebula. It is such a unique multichrome. I don't have anything like this, and there's been so many multichromes that have come out since the shadow, but that one is pretty unique. They just really nailed the tones of their purples. They have lots and lots of purples. Next, let's talk about Lethal Cosmetics. They have come out with a bunch of multichromes. I have a ton of their matte eyeshadows, which we'll talk about later. But these are their multichrome eyeshadows, and they also have a couple of different textures going on here. These in particular are a bit more sparkly, a little bit more shiny. So this one, for example, compared to the shade down here, which is super smooth, it looks way more shiny in camera than it does. But from my view, I see a really interesting almost mauve-y purple, and then you see a bright green. I have dedicated videos on these. This one unfortunately has hard pan. This one is very underwhelming. I have similar shadows like this. I forget which one is this. I'm gonna have to use my little magnet tool to hopefully get it out. That shade is called Genesis. Yeah, I don't really recommend that one personally, but check out that video if you're interested in Lethal Cosmetics. I would say if you're US based, then I would just stick with the US based indie brands. I don't think any of these are particularly extremely unique. Buy these shadows from Lethal Cosmetics, but of course it is really nice to have this option for anyone that is based in Europe. I have 4 multichrome shadows from NBA Cosmetics. I'm going to bring them up a little bit closer. I definitely have some similar shadows, but there are 2 shades here particularly, which is Haunted and Luminosity, and I thought these were really interesting. They're a little bit similar to those weirdly grayish shades from Terra that I just mentioned. I think it was like Over the Moon or something like that. I don't remember the other one. These are, I would say, more shiny, but they do have that interesting grayed out base. I can really see it from my angle, but these are pretty shiny. Let's talk about Odin's Eye. I have the multichromes in this empty palette from them, and then I have all the greens and the blues in here, as well as like the silver. And then in here I have the rest of the shadows, which the rest of them are not multichromes. Oh my gosh, it's opening from the other side. Whoopsie. And then these are just, these came in single compacts. These are from Sugar Drizzle Polish. And I did decide to put them in an empty palette versus keeping them in the compact because I just find myself not reaching for my compact stuff. So I have a pretty recent dedicated video on these. I don't think I'm going to be really swatching anything. I guess the main thing about these is I feel like the multichromes that are the really smooth, darker base formula, the kind of jeweled type of multichromes, the 3 down here, to me, they're just not worth it. I would recommend buying from like Devinah, Clionadh, Terra, etc., etc. And then Leon, to me, is absolutely not a multichrome shade, even though it is advertised as one. There's no shift. I mean, it's like a blackish red, but it's not shifting. This shadow right here, I cannot remember the name of it. Just check out that video. But this one is completely like gummy-like. I had to repress it, and even then, I try to take out some of the oil. It's pretty much unusable. It's like putty. Thankfully, that's the only shadow that did that to me. And then some of these neutral shadows are actually pretty interesting. I really enjoy them. Like specifically, this one right here. I love this color. It is Chloe. I just love the tone of that one, as well as Robert, and I didn't mention that in my dedicated video, so you can see those all swatched, and I swatched it by color so you could kind of see which ones are more similar between like the purples, the neutrals, etc. So back to these Sugar Drizzle single eyeshadows. I believe they're called like Sugar Rose or something like that. I absolutely love these. I have not done a dedicated video on these, but I have featured them in some reels, and I think that they're so beautiful. Like, they're super shiny. They're a bit more on the sheer side. This one is like the smoothest one and the most opaque, and then the rest of them are pretty sheer. I recently did a video with this one right here. I have to relabel them, but this is Sugar Lilac. I featured it in a reel. I paired it with some blues, and it was so beautiful. And I mean, just these are really nice. I believe they're $16, and there's lots of coupon codes floating around that will bring it down to, I think, like 14.5 at least, or 14. And I think that these are just beautiful and super shiny. You've already seen this empty palette. I had some Terra Moons in them, but these are the Shellwe makeup single eyeshadows that they sent me, and I also have a pretty recent video on these where I featured them. I did some swatches. I did 2 or 3 looks. I don't remember how many exactly. And there's some really beautiful shades, specifically right here. I absolutely love Waterfall. I've swatched it so many times. It's such a pretty shadow. And then this one is also a really beautiful one. It's called Dry Riverbed, and it's got that greenish base with like gold and pink. It's so beautiful. And then some sheer shadows. I use this one as a highlighter in a reel. I finally put that reel up. I know I mentioned it in my video on this collection that I was going to put them in a reel. and then I didn't have the reel up yet when the video went up, but look at that. That's green, and then it's pink. And then there's gold. Oh my goodness, it's so beautiful. I absolutely love these shadows, and I love that for the most part, they're on the lighter side with the exception of this one. I think these are great for spring for just layering one and done shadows. So this is my dedicated palette filled with black-based multichromes only or dual multichromes. I do have some brands that obviously don't fit in here. For example, actually I think it's only the Clionadh multichromes that do not fit in here, and I kind of like having all my Clionadh stuff together, so I don't mind them. Plus I can recognize them easily because they have the square pans. But here we have Menagerie Cosmetics, there's Touch of Glam Beauty, Shellwe, Devinah, Terra. There's just all the brands, and it's nice and handy to have them all together like this. And I think you could already see just from looking at this palette how many similar of these jewel tone multichromes are across all the brands. And I have a dedicated video where I swatch compare to the Clionadh multichromes from the Stained Glass collection, all 22 multichromes, and I did swatch comparisons with all of these. So if you're into these jewel kind of multichromes, definitely check that video up. Oh, there is actually ShineBySD has some that are jewel tone, but they're not like completely black based. I think that these jewel tone multichromes have come a long way since they really became popular a few years ago. So even the Shellwe ones, not all of them are completely like black based and dark. So you can kind of see these ones in particular when I swatch them. And then if I start to kind of blend them out, I don't really see that black base, which is super helpful. They're obviously going to be on the darker side, but let's compare it to, for example, like a Devinah shadow. And don't ask me which ones I'm just swatching because I'm not going to remember. But you can see this one. It's pretty gray on the edge here. This empty palette is kind of miscellaneous. So we have Devinah shadows for the first 3 rows. So these are ShineBySD. These are from the collab palette between, it was called the Elysian palette. It was collaboration between Basket Case Beauty and ShineBySD. And then these 3 are from Tracy's Powder Room. These are so beautiful. I did a dedicated video on these, but oh my goodness, it's so shiny. So beautiful, so pigmented. Look at this one, like it's just super extra vibrant. And then the last column is all my Glaminatrix multichromes, this shade, and I do believe I have swatch comparisons all of these. These came out around the same time as a bunch of brands were coming out with pretty much the same shade, so I just swatched Baubles and Cornflower. Cornflower is kind of, I feel like, low-key a famous shade. Next up, I have these shadows. I believe some of these are from the Mermazing palette. Yes, from Clarity, that I absolutely hated the mattes in that one, the pastel palette. And then a bunch of these are from Gimme Glow. I believe it's these 3, I'm pretty sure. So there's Glass Slipper, Party Monster, what's the third one? Mermaid Waters, and Electric Unicorn. And then I feel like the rest of these, yes, so these are from the Mermazing palette. So let me just swatch Glass Slipper and the Monster one. These are super sparkly. Party Monster is almost like a multichrome. It kind of reminds me of some shadows that I already have from like Devinah, and also a similar texture, I would say. And then the Waters one, it's not that shifty, but it does shift to a beautiful darker bluish purple. More ShineBySD here. So these are kind of by collection. I think these are in my Black Friday order, and then these are some of their kind of jeweled multichromes. I forget what they were called. It was like part of a collection. There was, I believe, 20 shadows at least in there, so I don't have all of them here, and I do have a dedicated video on these with swatch comparisons. These over here are other ShineBySD. ShineBySD has lots of amazing purple shadows to choose from. Like, look at all these purples. There's so much to choose from. Definitely some similarities, so I would say probably, you know, kind of go with one or the other. I'm pretty sure I have a dedicated video on these. These do include the Duality collection in here. I did depot it and put it into this empty palette. And then what I'm not 100% sure. I just realized I have some Touch of Glam Beauty in here, which I definitely want to move in along with my Touch of Glam stuff. So these are some hollow shadows. So this one I think was Ghost Hollow. It was so cool. To see the hollow, you need direct light, kind of like a sunlight. And then here's Honey Hollow. I love this one. I did a reel with this one, really beautiful. And then some of these other ones are Kristen Leigh Cosmetics, and I have videos on those as well. And then this is just like a straight up Hello Hollow shadow from Touch of Glam Beauty. I could definitely see the hollow in this one, even without the bright light. I just talked for like 5 minutes and the camera wasn't recording, but these top 2 rows are from ShineBySD in collaboration with Riley. These are the Earthborn collection. These 2 are ItsBel Cosmetics, and then these are all Kristen Leigh Cosmetics. These are from Farinay, which I honestly, I was going to do a dedicated video, but these are really just kind of disappointing to me. They're not really that shiny, especially this one right here. Just for funsies, I'll tell you the names. This one is Embers, and then the darker one is Utopia. And I also picked shades that are very similar to each other. The real difference is one is a black-based multichrome, one isn't. And then these 2 bottom rows are all Burn Image shadows. I have a dedicated video on these. If you want to see all the colors and swatches as well as names, these are really nice and shiny, a bit more topper-like, most of them. Except these are all my Glam Shop shimmer shadows. These are all hollows right here. So they're completely holographic. They have different tones to them, however, or like base colors. And then these are kind of like similar to the Glaminatrix Cosmetics shades, as well as the Touch of Glam Beauty Color Me Multis. I think they call Color Me Multis. I absolutely love this shadow. This is like a green base with a pink reflect before it was cool, before everyone else started doing it with indie brands. This is not labeled as a multichrome shadow. It is called Teal, but to me, it's pretty much a multichrome shadow. Look at this one. Oh, it's so beautiful. So shiny. They have some really beautiful textures for topper-like shades. I also love this one. This one's also like a green with an orange reflect in it, orangey reddish reflect. This one's definitely not really that shiny, Abacadabra, but it is such a unique tone. I don't have anything like this, and that's why I've kept it. So this is the palette I forgot to mention in my single eyeshadow palette video, and this is from Devinah, and this of course has only Devinah shadows, and today they're coming out with some empty palettes that have a clear front, and I'm so excited, definitely snagging so I can fit all of my Devinah shadows in those. I'm very excited for that. So here we have a bunch of collections kind of together. I don't remember all of the collections, but there's some I think like candy cakes. The names are all escaping me of course right now, but I have dedicated videos on all of these, and I'm pretty sure for the most part I did swatch comparisons for all these as well. And I love Devinah's shadows because they have some really just differentiating textures. I think if I would say what it kind of compares to, I would say the Astral shades from Pat McGrath. They're not completely the same, but they're kind of the closest I would say to those, because they're almost a little bit piecey and they have that extra sparkle to them. And of course some of them are a little bit more sheer than others, so like these shadows aren't really sheer. But for example, this shadow is a little bit chunkier. You can see that from the swatch. And then this one is nice and smooth. So they have kind of varying textures. And some of them are a little bit more shiny than others. And I think some signature ones are like Tucana. I believe this one, is it this one? No, there was one. Oh, it's this one. Mystic Moon Pie is honestly legendary. Oh, this one is so beautiful. It's a great neutral shadow. Here's the rest of my Touch of Glam Beauty shadows, and these are in the new Adept Infinity Stack palettes. And these ones right here are repan Color Me Multi, so these come in a square pan, and I just repress them, not using any alcohol or anything like that. They are a little bit on the flaky side, so they just needed lots of pressure to get them down. And again, I have swatches and swatch comparisons on all of these shadows. I'm going to swatch this yellow one because it is so pretty. It has a very strong yellow base, but a orange shift, which, there we go. It's like a reddish orange. To me, it looks very orangey from my angle. And then of course the Color Me Multis are just so shiny. This one right here is Spring Into Action. Nice topper-like shade, and it does smooth out even though it is a little bit on the flaky side. So beautiful. This one is great for pairing with neutrals, I think. And then of course Lucid Lavender. I love swatching this one. This is still one of my top shades. I just love this one. It is such a stunning shadow. Moving on to my iridescent shadows. These are all in one palette. So we've got Clionadh, of course. There's Devinah and Terra Moon's shadows. I have comparisons between all of these already up from, I would say, about a year or two ago. So just for fun, let's do a couple swatches here as well. This shadow is called Nokomis. This was from Devinah. And this one to me is not that shifty. Like when I put it on, I don't think for an iridescent shadow it's really that shifty, but it is still really beautiful. One of my absolute favorite shades is definitely Phoenix, and this is from Terra Moon's, and I definitely don't think you're going to see it in its utmost glory here, but it is just such a stunning shade. This is such a summery shade. I think the name really suits it really well. And then let me swatch one shadow from Clionadh. This one is called Gloaming. Super pretty, a little bit more on the sparkly side. I think you could see the texture difference. And there's definitely some texture differences here, which you could already kind of see it from the pan, which ones look a little bit more textured, like this shadow, these two shadows, definitely this shadow. These two are very sparkly down here, and then these are a little bit more like smooth. So let me just so you can kind of see a little bit of a difference in finish, just even the way they pick up. And the last up are my Clionadh shadows. I have almost all of the shadows from the Stained Glass collection except for two, I believe, and they're from the Series 1 Iridescent Multichromes. They're actually in here, so there's 2 or 3 other shades, and I just wasn't really a huge fan of these. They're just not really anything too much I see myself using. They're a little bit more on the satin side. For anyone who doesn't want too much sparkle, I have a dedicated video on the original shades as well as the extension shades and comparisons as well. I will link that down in the description box. So up here are the extended glitter multichromes, and I have these kind of split up a little bit by type. So these are the pearlescent ones, I believe, and then some of these are the electric, and then some of these are the deep iridescent, and then the earth shine. It just happens so they perfectly fit because there's only 12 shades, so they fit into these Viseart empty palettes, which I did feature in my dedicated empty palette video. And so I like having them in here. I think it looks really, really beautiful to have them in here, actually. They just look like little gemstones, really nicely organized. So let's see, I have a dedicated video where I did, I believe, 2 looks with the pearlescent shadow. So these are a bit more like your friendly, everyday, neutral multichromes, and they're so smooth and just really, really beautiful on the lid. Definitely you could pair that with all kinds of broader toned shadows, like kind of like one and done shadows as well. So let me swatch some of these newer shadows. Here's this one. Oh my gosh, I love this one. It's such a beautiful color. Just gonna put that here. This one is the shade Diadem, and then here's another shadow that's really beautiful. And this is Duchess, and so this formula has that extra sparkle to them. They're a little bit more texture, but as you can see, they do smooth out, but they are a bit different in finish compared to this. I think you could really easily see that. That is super smooth. You can see a little bit more texture, a little bit more sparkles. These are all the original shadows. So we have the glitter multichromes. Also would like to mention and emphasize that because they're called glitter, that doesn't mean there's any glitter. There's absolutely zero plastic particles, anything like that. They're just called glitter because they're so sparkly. So that these up here are all the jewel tone multichromes. I just realized there's actually a couple more shades that they've added to the collection that have been released kind of with some restock. So I don't have those. I think there's like 2 or 3, maybe 4 shadows. I believe these are all the electric shades, and this one, of course, Mural. Everybody loves this shade, and rightfully so. It is so special, so beautiful, so shiny. These are super foiled, metallic, and smooth. I don't remember exactly what this one is called, but this one is really beautiful too. And I mean, look at that. Look how far one swatch goes. These are just so pigmented and so stunning. I thought I would leave the mattes for last. I do have some other single shadows, which are basically compacts that I have not put into empty palettes, so I will talk about those after these, but let's just breeze through these. I have 2 empty palettes from Lethal Cosmetics full of lethal shadows. So these are the warm tones, and then these are the cool tones. I have a full swatch video on these in case you're interested, so I'm not going to be swatching any of these. Also, they're matte shadows, so I feel like that's not really that exciting. These are all my Burn-A-Rich matte shadows. I absolutely love their formula. These are super nice. I do think that the colorful shadows are a little bit different from the more neutral shadows, but they're still really nice. These are predominantly my Devinah matte shadows, and then there's random Sugar Pill shadow and a random NARS shadow that I've had for, it must be like at least 8 years, and I was like, oh yeah, I love this orange, I'm gonna use this orange. This was like right when I was getting really into makeup, and I just bought a giant pan of orange shadow. But anyways, that's in here. Actually, let's just swatch it. It's called Persia. It is, I mean, it's a beautiful orange, that's for sure. It's definitely like a beautiful fall type of orange. Devinah has some really interesting tones of matte shadows, which is why I have them. And then in this empty palette from Unearthly Cosmetics are all of my Terra Moons mattes. There's some neon, some pastels, and just some other matte shadows that they've kind of launched throughout the last couple of years, along with some multichrome shadows. So I like to pair these with the Terra shadows. I am going to include these in this video, and these are just single eyeshadows that are in compacts, and most of them, I believe, I can't quite take out and depot and put somewhere else unless I really like want to spend the time and take the time to do it. So there's some shadows that are newer to my collection that I'm waiting to do videos on, specifically some of these Moira shadows. I featured this one right here, Jupiter, in a reel semi-recently, and this is a really beautiful, affordable, kind of more neutral duochrome shadow. And then here's Milky Way, and here's Saturn. Are they the shiniest, the most opaque? No, I think they're meant to be a little bit more topper-like. I have this Luna shadow from M Cosmetics. This is like a cream shadow. Definitely have to be very careful with this one because it does crease on me, but it is so metallic, and just the way it looks in the pan is amazing, but it's rather large. I have one pressed shadow from Karla Cosmetics. This is called Neverland. This one is kind of the most similar to Weld from Clionadh. It is a really, really beautiful black-based multichrome. I have these two random sparkly Ulta eyeshadows. These are extremely topper-like. They're really just to add lots of sparkle and not necessarily anything else. And these just feel really, really beautiful when you touch them. But yeah, they're really just there for like an effortless kind of everyday sparkle. I have two kind of cosmetic shadows. I had some more previously, but they were absolutely unusable. These are like a new formula. These are very, very flaky. I'm not even going to swatch these. I was going to do a video on these. I don't think I ended up having time. And these are just okay. I'm actually considering decluttering them. I feel like this might be like an impromptu little declutter we're going to have going on here, because there's definitely some shadows that I see already that I know that I'm going to be decluttering. Next up are these three. Is it just three? These three Topshop shadows. Okay, 4 Topshop shadows. These are no longer available, and I'm so sad about it because I believe they were $12 or $14 each, and these three specifically are the closest in texture to the Astral shades from Pat McGrath, and these are just so beautiful. This one actually fell out of the pan, so you can see what the pan looks like. They're obviously kind of like bake style. So what is this? This one's called Changeling. They had really interesting names, and this is just like your typical brown-green duochrome shade. It is so beautiful, so sparkly, very impactful. This one's also really nice. This one is called Shuffle the Cards. I think there was one more in this set, and oh my god, it's so sparkly. Let me just quickly swatch these at the back of my head. They're so, so beautiful, so shiny. For drugstore, they're pretty impressive. And then this one is Eyeshadow and Holograph. I feel like this one is, yeah, it's a little hard panny. It's okay. It's kind of just like a sheen. Nothing really special. I think I meant to do a video on these at some point, but these are like quite a few years old at this point, and like I said, they're no longer available. And then also I had this one single shadow from Pat McGrath. This one is called VR, and I'm not going to say that word just in case I don't get demonetized, but this is just like a black-based multichrome that is a teal to purple. So again, I don't think that you're going to really see that. It's not really impressive. I have a dedicated video on this one, and I have swatch comparisons on this one as well. But yeah, it just shifts to a purple. Okay, I swatched it this way so that I could show you the shift, but it's nothing special. I believe this came in a set for like $50 or something like that. It's a little wild. I have this random K-Beauty shadow. I believe I ordered when I ordered some sunscreen from Yes Style or something like that. And this is just really pretty and really sparkly. The aqua shade is actually a little bit more satin, but this one is really sparkly. You could probably like topper it over. So I do have 3 Munda shadows from Urban Decay. These are pretty expensive. Again, I was going to do a dedicated video on these. This shadow is Space Cowboy. I think this one is like kind of one of the most well-known shades, and I love this packaging. It's actually really nice. This one is Solstice. I mean, of course, indie brands do it better, and they're not like $22, I think is how much these are. And then this last one is Cosmic. Which looks like more like an iridescent. Oh, that is so pretty. It's basically like a shimmery white shadow. So these are really, really pretty. Again, going to be doing some videos with them, maybe some reels or something like that. Onto these Terra shadows. So these 3 are like black-based dark multichromes. I did a video where I ordered these from AliExpress and just tried them out because I was curious. So I do have a full dedicated video on these, swatching them, comparing them, etc. So these are kind of like highlighters. I think they're meant to be, no, it's an eyeshadow, but I think I use them as highlighters. They're pretty decent. I mean, they're okay. And then here are the black-based multichromes. They had a really beautiful rose texture in them, kind of like the the Shadow Strip Sugar Drizzle. The only shadow here that was actually pretty good was this one right here, and that is the 504 shadow. It was so shiny, really beautiful, but it is a black-based multi-chrome. But I thought this one was actually relatively unique in terms of black-based multi-chromes. This one's like sticky. It's completely unusable. Do you see how it's completely mush? And then I think this one was like a little bit squishy. No, this one's okay. This one basically looks like Exosphere or Patina from all these other brands. And honestly, they weren't even really affordable either. I'm keeping these purely for reference. Next up are these Sephora Single Shadows. Now, I've seen some videos where they're featured and some of them are really, really nice and beautiful. And so I went because they were on sale when I bought them last year for like 30% off plus like an extra something off. So they were like relatively even cheaper, which they're already like not that expensive. But anyways, a bunch of them came broken. This is a very cheap compact, of course. I had to repress some of them, which actually I think in turn kind of ruined them. But I don't think the pigment was that great. I was going to do a video on these and then never got to it. But this one is Mirage. And this one is okay. It feels a little creamy. It's not too bad for being a kind of duochrome shadow from a mainstream brand, but I don't think this formula is going to be really that great. This one right here is a complete dud. This one is called Girl Talk. It's supposed to be a glitter shadow, and it does have glitter flecks throughout it, actually. This one just feels really weird. And it kind of swatches patchy. It just looks patchy because of the glitter particles that are throughout it. Put that one aside because I'm going to declutter that one. This one is 1 in a million, and you can kind of see it's completely like hard pan. It's pretty much satin, and there's not really much duochrome happening, so I'm going to get rid of that one as well. This one is called Semi-Sweet Chocolate. I think this is one of the ones I was really curious about. It's a little bit like a cream texture, but not really. It's definitely a bit more on the drier side. So the two that are like definitely cream textures are Milky Way and Shock Chalk, which these look just absolutely beautiful. However, they do crease on me pretty badly. So if you have hooded eyes, I would definitely not recommend getting these. They do feel creamy in the pan. They're super shiny, but they're really nice for like a natural look if that's something you're into. This one is Fantasia. Might as well just swatch all of these since we're already here and I'm not going to be doing a dedicated video on these. This one is kind of mediocre. It's a little bit patchy. I believe I had to repress this one. Not really that great. They came like shattered. It wasn't like broken into pieces. This one is Unicorn Dust. And I can already tell this one's completely hard panned and it's gonna look, yeah, it's got like not even a sheen. It looks so weird. It's not even coming off my finger. That's really weird. So getting rid of that one, obviously. And then next up is Playing with Fire. This one's okay. It has potential. It's a little bit hard panny, but it is quite pretty. I definitely have seen lots of shadows like this from other brands, though. So that brings us to the end. That is my single eyeshadow collection where it stands currently in 2023. I'll probably do an updated version sometime next year, and I have kind of been decluttering this as time goes by. I just haven't been filming it, so there are definitely some shadows are removed. For example, JD Glow as well as Pastel Roses UK. My Pastel Roses UK shadows actually went bad. They smelled just really bad, so I had to get rid of them. And then I think quite a few of Cindy Grace shadows. Not really any particular reason for those, just that I just have so many and I much prefer these kind of special shimmery shadows especially. So I hope you enjoyed this video and all the swatches, and make sure you check out the description box because I'm going to be linking some relevant videos, and not all of them though, so check out the playlist if you're looking for specific shadow collections from these. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.